This is a steal for the Toronto Maple Leafs. We have a massive new report that has dropped, revealing some huge information surrounding one particular player. We're going to break that down and discuss what it means going forward. This report not only reveals some big information, but reveals that huge moves are on the horizon, particularly regarding a forward that a lot of Leafs fans are very familiar with. We're going to break that down as well as discuss an interesting report from Chris Johnson that you're going to want to stay tuned for till the end. But before you get into it all, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Leafs content. You guys have been absolute beasts for the support lately. 71% of you are watching right now aren't subscribed, so make sure to hit the subscribe button. There's lots to go over today, and of course, there's been a lot of news surrounding the Leafs lately. They've made some moves, but more moves are to come, and reports have come out revealing some big information lately surrounding not only their plans going forward, but their interest in one particular player, as well as some other interesting notes. And let's just dive right into it here now. You can see this here from Chris Johnson. So we're going to start with this before diving into some of the new reports here as well. This one also came out very recently. It might be late July into early August until the Maple Leafs finally complete the picture here. Brad Marchand was number one on their list, make no mistake, but this is not the Leafs roster as it will be comprised in training camp. So it kind of is interesting because this is a pretty big trade update. Now, we know the Leafs are most notably involved in trade talks compared to free agency, and Chris Johnson's coming out and saying that these trade talks might extend into late July. It might extend into the next few weeks here into early August because they're going to make sure that they get the player that they think fits best, especially with, the assets they have. We've heard Nazem Kadri. We've heard a bunch of different names. And Darius, some new reports are starting to drop, not only revealing the timeline, but linking the Leafs to one player, in particular here, and that is a player from Florida, which we're going to dive into as well. As James Murdo report came out very recently saying that Florida's going to lose somebody because they're over the cap, and people seem to think it's going to be Evan Rodriguez. So, Darius, what are your thoughts on this? Things are starting to line up here a little bit. Florida did retain the three, the three really important players in their team, but they're also going to be losing someone. And pair that with the Leafs here being interested in both the trade and free agency market very, very soon. A big move is going to be coming.
Yeah, first of all, in terms of free agency, I think that Brad Treliving and the Leafs are close to done. They're probably just going to be adding a couple guys for the bottom six at this point. I don't think that via free agency, there's nobody left that they can sign that can play in the top six. That's all done. Ehlers is done. We knew that he probably wasn't going to come to Toronto anyway. They were never really named on his list, and obviously there was other teams in the running there. So I don't think it's via free agency. We know now from Brad Treliving and multiple reports from multiple insiders that it's going to be via trade, and it could linger into August. So I think it's very interesting that, there's a lot of teams that are kind of just sitting on their hands right now. And okay, let's take a look at our cap situation. We got who we wanted. How do we make some more tweaks? And I think when you look at Florida and their cap situation right now, the reason people and multiple insiders are, revealing that it could be Evan Rodriguez is because the cap makes sense. He makes $3 million, which, by the way, we'll get into how Rodriguez fits into the Leafs, but for only $3 million to get a Stanley Cup winner and a guy who, puts up a lot of points for that team who won the Stanley Cup, not bad at all. So wouldn't mind that move, but we'll get to that in a second. But for the Florida Panthers, they have to move somebody. They got, they were able to retain somehow all three of their big free agents, which is just absolutely sickening. But you can take a look at their roster here. Rodriguez is here, but they're going to have to move somebody, right? And somebody with significant cap. And you're not moving Matthew Tkachuk. You're not moving, Carter Verhaeghe, all of these guys. It's probably going to be a guy like Evan Rodriguez. And I don't think they can move anyone off the back end either. They made some interesting signings there, but I don't think they can afford to move anyone off their defense. And I don't think the Leafs need defense either, so that wouldn't matter, right? But it could be Evan Rodriguez, and I think the fit could actually be there. We know he can play in a top six. We know he can be effective in a top six and in the playoffs. So that could make a lot of sense. And I know a lot of people are probably shouting at their phone, their TV screen, their laptop, whatever it is. Why would the Panthers ever do this? They're in a pinch, right? Like they kind of have no leverage in this situation either. They're going to have to give them up. So it could be another situation like Michelli where you take advantage of a team who has to give somebody up. I'm not saying you're going to get him for peanuts, but it's not going to be like a straight up trade like it would be in the middle of the season, let's say, where all things are equal.
Yeah, and of course, obviously within the division, they're rivals to a degree, but at the same time, like they need to shed salary. And could they find another team to take him? It is very true, and it is very possible, rather. The Leafs are the most desperate team right now. At least maybe not most desperate, but the most notable team in the trade market. Like they are actively shopping it. Rodriguez, he has another year on his deal. He's only 31 years old. We can see here from David Pagnotta, the Leafs are trying to get a top six forward. Would you consider Evan Rodriguez, a premier top six forward? Maybe not. Would he give the Leafs exactly what they need? That's up to you guys and let us know down below. But it would give them some winning pedigree on a very cheap deal. And they could get him and also still get another player because of how small the cap it is at $3 million. And of course, you might have to work things around. There's been a lot of rumblings about trading away some defensemen on the Leafs. Like there's a lot of ways you can go around this here. But it's very interesting. Of course, their cap space right now is 4.983 million. So Rodriguez would take up 3, assuming there's obviously no retained here, because that's the whole point of the trade if you're the Florida Panthers. It makes things very interesting. If you're unfamiliar with his game a little bit, so he'd have another year. Again, this is year 3 of 4. He'd have another year on his deal. He is he's an interesting one. He has 36 goals, 65 assists, and a plus minus, a plus 31 in 207 career games for the Panthers in the regular season and playoffs. So, Panthers fans want to retain him. He's about a half a point per game player, which I don't necessarily know that the Leafs, they might strive for higher, but this could be maybe a backup plan or a cheaper plan if they can't go for it. But Darius, what do you think about the actual fit surrounding the player? Because we know they poked around on Jordan Kyrou, and now they've also poked around on Evan Rodriguez, according to multiple reports. And also I'll ask you, who do you think they give up in exchange for Evan Rodriguez? Is it going to be another Nick Robertson situation?
I don't think the Florida Panthers can take back any salary, but I'll get into that in a second. I do want to say that I truly believe Brad Treliving is going to shoot for the stars here. I don't think he's shooting for Evan Rodriguez. This could be a very good, backup option if everything else fails, because keep in mind, he still needs to trade Calle Yarncroke and David Kampf. David Kampf does not have a role on this team next season, so they have to free up that salary cap space to really get rolling here, and that's why things might linger into August, right? So he has to make that move first. But in terms of Evan Rodriguez and fitting into the top 6, half a point a game player. I mean, if you stick him with a guy on the left wing like William Nylander, he's going to get more points. It's just the fact of the matter. He's going to be playing with an elite talent, right? So I feel like he's going to put up more points. The Panthers are really, really good in the playoffs, but I don't think they have a guy like William Nylander that can put up points like that. Of course, not an Austin Matthews, but they have really solid players still and a lot of guys who can score. We've seen in the past 40 goals, but I just think Rodriguez, just the fact of the matter, if he was on the Leafs, he would put up more points. But again, in terms of a return, maybe it's Nick Robertson, right? Like, I guess maybe they could use some scoring, depth scoring. I don't know if he necessarily fits there, but the thing for me, and this is where, you got to look at both sides of things here. I don't know if a trade necessarily works out because the Panthers can't take on any salary. The whole reason they would be making this trade is, like you see here, they're in the negative right now, right? So they would have to ship out salary. They can't take in salary. And if you're the Leafs, do you want to trade futures to a division rival, an actual rival that you've played in the playoffs? And speaking of futures, do you even have futures you can give up? I mean, we know who's in the system right now. You want to hang on to them. Ben Danford, Easton Cowan, not saying that they would be included in a trade like this because I think that would be absurd, but do you really want to give up any futures or draft picks, right? So, because you don't have that many of them at this point, you need to start restocking a little bit. So that's looking at the other side of things, but it could make some sense as the summer goes on. And I think that the Panthers, they're in a decent spot right now. They can hang on to things as it is for a while longer, but they are going to have to move a player coming up here. So it's something to take a look at, but I do think ultimately Brad Treliving will be shooting for the stars. Somebody else that probably makes more money is going to free up some salary cap space. But if all fails, I think this would be a really good option. And you can win with this guy. We've seen it. He is another dog. He gets it done in the playoffs.
Yeah, and of course it would be a steal because, and only if, you get him for very cheap, which would be the case. Like, you wouldn't have to give up, in theory. Like, I have full faith Brad Treliving wouldn't give up a ton of assets to acquire this guy, because he is a ceiling raiser. I think he could actually, maybe he ends up being the asset that puts them over the top, especially in the playoffs, especially with his experience and obviously winning the cup last year. But at the same time, because of the pinch the Panthers are in, it becomes a steal when it's for very little assets, like you mentioned, no salary going back. So let us know down below what your thoughts are on the player. Of course, it could be a part of bigger moves to come, as well as, again, potential trade of a defenseman for maybe a forward. We'll keep you up to date with everything there. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. See you later.